Hello, everyone. Today we're going to be talking about proving choice, which I think is very interesting because I think it plays a very valuable role in every debate that you will encounter. So please make sure you pay attention. Under the things we're going to cover today, we're going to go through a brief definition of choice. We're going to look at the components of choice. We're going to look at how choice kind of applies in debate and how to assess the validity of choice, and then deciding who should be making decisions. And we're going to try and tie all of that up in the end to have a short but clear discussion on how choice arguments are made. But first things first, let's go through our definition. Choice refers to the act or process of making a selection or decision among multiple alternatives or options based on personal preference, values, goals, or circumstances. It is a fundamental aspect of human cognition and behavior, playing a crucial role in various aspects of life, including decision making, problem solving, and everyday actions. Essentially, choice is what in many cases separates us from an inanimate object. We have the ability to move, we have a brain, we have the ability to make decisions that govern our own lives. So it's a very, very important aspect of assessing humanity and who humans are. So let's look at a few components of choice. So the components of choice that we're looking at here and referring to are all of the things that have to be present in order for a choice to be a choice. Firstly, it is alternatives. So there have to be different paths and different avenues that you can choose from. Second to that, it is decision making. There has to be a conscious and deliberate process of comparing the alternatives to reach a possible decision. Thirdly, it is personal agency. So it is to say that you as an individual have the ability and right to make said decision. The fourth one is consequences. For each outcome, there have to be a set of consequences that will arise for that particular alternative or outcome. And then the fifth one would be trade offs. So it is to say that by choosing one thing, you may possibly give up something else. So it includes making compromises of that nature such that you are sacrificing when you are making a decision. For example, when you are choosing between staying in at home or going out with your friends, you are trading off, for example, the comfortability of staying at home and relaxing for the alternative of going out and hanging out with your friends. Or if you go out and hang out with your friends and enjoy the time there, you are trading in the comfortability and relaxation of being at home. So there is that trade off that's being consistently made. Specifically looking at choice in debates. Every debate is about someone making a decision, whether or not it is an individual person, a company, or the government. It is every debate, there is someone who is making a choice, or there is an entity, or as we like to call them in debating, an actor that's making a decision. So, understanding the principles of the video that we're doing today is not only important for creating a choice argument, but it is also important for understanding how different actors should interact with the idea of choice. Second to that, it is the foundation of many controversial issues, such as the abortion debate. If you look at the Roe v. Wade ruling that was overturned, the abortion debate is still as hot as ever. So it's a space where we need to kind of understand how choice should work, and how humans should interact with the idea of choice. And then also, choice is inextricably linked to the concept of consent. So, understanding choice gives you a better understanding of consent itself, which we think is something that is valuable for all people to understand in their lives and is applicable in many situations that allow us to be more comfortable around each other as human beings. So, these are the things that make the debate or the conversation around choice important. So, when I speak about a valid choice, we need to have a short conversation around the word validity. Being valid in this scenario means that it makes sense and it is acceptable. So, a valid choice is a choice that we can accept as a choice that is making sense. Not to say that it is the right choice, we'll have a conversation about that later, but it is a choice that ticks all the boxes and makes sense. So a choice is valid if it fulfills all of the three following criteria. So it has to be rational, which, yeah, we'll discuss rationality in a second, but it has to be rational. You have to be informed when you are making the choice, and the choice has to be voluntarily made. Let's look into each of these things and what they mean. First, speaking about rationality. So, rationality refers to being in the correct mental state to make a decision. What you'll notice about this is I'm going to spend a bit of time on rationality just because it is the most arguable part of choices and debates. So, a lot of people argue that someone shouldn't make a decision because they're irrational. So, the way that I find is easier and stronger for arguing rationality is being able to bring it to a concrete, testable, and provable thing, which is why the way that I've chosen to measure rationality is on a scientific level. Are there any problems with someone's brain that would impact their ability to make a decision? So the definition that you see here on the screen is that, is someone in the correct mental state to make a decision? So it suggests that you are not suffering from any neurological, psychiatric, psychological, or endocrine impairments that have the capacity to significantly hamper your ability to make a decision. The reason why that part is in bold at the end is it is perfectly normal or perfectly acceptable to be living with something like bipolar disorder, and still your decisions are valid so long as it is managed and not significantly impacting your ability to make decisions. So that is an example of how you can have one of the things that I listed in the above and still have rational decisions. In the case where it is unmanaged, I think then rationality can come into play. So it is important to have a concrete and clear idea of rationality, but it's fine because we're going to go through a bit more of the science around what it means to be a rational person. So what we have here is an image of the human brain. I want to call it a map of the human brain, and there's so many interesting parts to it. There's the somatosensory area, there's the primary motor area, all of these interesting things. But what I want you guys to focus on is the prefrontal cortex. So you might have noticed that I circled it there. It's the part in front. Of the human brain. And that part is responsible for working memory for spatial tasks, executive area for task management, working on memory for objective recall tasks, and solving complex multitask problems. I want to summarize all of that for you. The prefrontal cortex is the part of your brain that is most important for making decisions. It is where those decisions are made. It is where cognition happens. It is where the executive functions of your brain that define you being a human essentially happen. So, a lot of interesting things are important when we come to the prefrontal cortex. So, one of the common conversations around it and rationality is that the prefrontal cortex is only fully developed at the age of 25. So the argument that people come up with here is that because it is the area in your brain that is responsible for decision making, your rationality isn't fully developed until you are at that age of 25. However, just because your prefrontal cortex isn't fully grown until you're 25 does not mean that your decisions are irrational until you are 25. There are different benchmarks for that different people have insofar as establishing rationality. I know that the prefrontal cortex also grows at a slower rate, and then there's a certain point in time where it grows much faster, or it reaches a certain threshold where the decisions that people make at that level can be deemed rational. But we're going to talk about another important benchmark in a second, which is the age of 18, because that's another important benchmark people use for rationality. So, at the age of 18, the most important thing that happens on a scientific or biological level is that you become sexually mature. So, what I mean by this is not only a conversation of the development of your external genitalia, but it is also your ability to control hormones. Remember, puberty itself is something that is brought about by the endocrine system in your body, mainly through hormones that regulate the growth of your genitals, that regulate different changes that happen in your body, but also that regulate how you think and see other people. So while all of this is happening throughout puberty. By the time you turn 18 and you are sexually mature, you also have now developed a better ability to control those hormones. So at the point at which you control those hormones much better when you're around the age of 18, that means that your ability to make decisions in relation to your hormones is also significantly better, right? So that is the benchmark of the age 18. So your decision making becomes better around then because you have a better control of those hormones as well. And then from there, the neurological development, which is, remember, we were talking about the prefrontal cortex earlier on, the point at which it's developed at the age of 18 is also at a point where it's pretty good at making uh, decisions and doing executive functions. But also, another important thing to notice is that development isn't only a scientific thing, it's also in relation to your social context, right? So by the age of 18, you're generally done with school, which means that you've acquired a lot of knowledge, not only around your social interactions, but also just from the syllabus itself. So the degree to which you've acquired knowledge by the time you turn 18, around the social norms around it, mean that you are significantly more mature than someone who has not fully experienced the process of life and the process of education at that point in time. So that becomes another delimiter for why you are more rational at 18. So I'm going through all of this so that we can try and find ways to mechanize the idea of rationality, and we're not arguing it through arbitrary means that are difficult to measure. Here, I have a table. I'm not going to go into a lot of detail about this. This is again information that I'm leaving here so that you guys can mechanize it for yourself. So, this is a table of different hormones that exist in the body and the way that they affect your ability to make decisions, as well as the place where they're produced. I don't know if this is very clear yet, but I'm a medical student, so I really like using a biomedical approach to understanding rationality. So this table shows you all of the hormones and kind of how they work in affecting your ability to make rational decisions. And then this table here refers to a few mental diseases and how they affect your ability to make decisions. Again, this is not here to create a system of discrimination against people who may be living with some of these mental disorders, because generally, most of them, when they are managed, a person is able to have rational decisions and live a full and otherwise normal life that is no different to the life that you live. But in an unmanaged scenario, these mental illnesses also have the impact on your decision making that I've already listed. Then here it's a few controlled substances and the impact that they have on your ability to make decisions. So a lot of the time we have conversations around alcohol and kind of what happens to your body when you drink alcohol, and why um, when you are entering an encounter or a sexual encounter with someone who's drinking alcohol, they are not consenting. It's relating to this idea of rationality, and if you understand the the information under the mechanisms of impaired decision making, specifically for alcohol, you would understand why they're not making a rational decision at that point in time. Then there's more information around other substances and the way that they affect your ability to make decisions. All right. The one thing that I want us to be very clear about, though, is that there's a clear difference between an irrational decision and a bad decision, right? So, an irrational decision is a decision that is made by a person who is prove it's provable that they are in a state of mental impairment, or that their mental function is compromised when they are making that decision. A bad decision is a decision that is made by someone who is in, for all intents and purposes, from a biological perspective, in a correct state of mind. However, the consequences of their decisions are negative, right? So you deciding to go back to your ex who's cheated on you for 5 times, that is a bad decision. That is not an irrational decision. Although I would argue it's not maybe the worst idea to have yourself checked out if you're making that kind of decision. But functionally speaking, that is a bad decision, not an irrational decision. Why is it important to draw a line between these two types of decisions? Because Bad decisions are absolutely necessary and they're a good thing because from the bad decisions that we make, we're able to learn and make better decisions in future. Some of those bad decisions may have a positive impact on the trajectory of our lives. These are all things that improve ourselves as human beings and allow us to grow. This is inextricably different from an irrational decision that you can't grow from because it is a decision that is made at a point in time where you are just not functioning the way that you should be functioning. It's also not a decision that is a reflection of you as a person because, again, you are mentally not performing the way that you should be performing. So that is the distinction between the two. Always make sure to create that distinction in debates so that people don't conflate them and you don't end up having the wrong conversations. I hope that this all gives you a clearer idea and understanding of rationality and how it works. Secondly, it is a conversation around informed choice. That was the second level of our criteria. So this is suggests that in order to make a decision, you should have an adequate amount of information about the options. So you can't choose between Zidlo and Metfuria with no understanding of what either of these things are. They're just random words at this point in time. So that's not a real choice because you don't know what's going on. You don't know what either of these things mean. So, in order to assess whether or not someone is informed in the decision they are making, there are three assessments that we do, or there are three pieces of information they need to have. Firstly, they need to know what decision they are making. So, if I say choose between Zidlo and Metfuria, you don't know what is this decision that I'm making. The difference is when you go to vote, you know that you are deciding on the party that is going to rule in your country for the next 4 years. So the first thing is they need to understand the decision that they are making. The second thing is they need to understand the factors that influence the outcome of that decision. So they need to have an ability to weigh up different things that could be happening at that point in time that would influence their ability to make the decision. For example, you want to buy a really cool watch, right? And you see the watch. So you need to understand that there's a factor of, hey, I really like this watch. That's factor one. Factor two is, I may not have enough money to buy this watch. Factor three may be, maybe if I take it on credit, I don't know, maybe it could have a positive impact and later I could have money, whatever. These are all the different factors that influence your ability to make the decision. Whereas if I'm saying choose between Zidlo and Matferia, I don't know what the factors are that should be influencing the decision. So there should be a clear outcome or a clear understanding of the different factors that would influence the decision. Then the third one is they should have a clear understanding of the probable consequences of their decision. By that I mean, when you are voting for a particular party, you should understand that it is probable that that party could either be in power or not be in power. So it's it has to work on you understanding what the possible consequences are. If there is a rogue consequence that was improbable that you didn't think would possibly happen, it is not your fault. You are not choosing to throw yourself into that negative consequence. It would be the same as me saying, hey, I'm driving now, and if I get into a car accident, I chose to get into a car accident because by virtue of me getting on the road, I'm choosing to get into the accident because that could be what happens. But the thing is, that's not a probable consequence of driving. You know what I mean? Based on the number of people who drive every day, there's a significantly lower number of people who get into car accidents as opposed to the people who are driving on the road every day. Because of that, it is more probable that I will get to my destination than it is that I will get into a car accident. So if I do get into a car accident, I'm not choosing to get into a car accident because that just wasn't the most likely outcome, right? So that's what I kind of want you guys to understand about what I mean when I say they need to understand the probable consequences of their decision. Cool, that felt like a lot of rambling. Sorry if there's some background noise going on. I think there's construction happening outside as well. Okay, then the third one about it being voluntarily made suggests that in order for a choice to be valid, it has to be made voluntarily. I think this is very simple. So long as there isn't a gun to someone's head, then that is a choice that is, made voluntarily. You are choosing to be in the situation to make that choice. the choice is not being forced upon you as an individual. So in that way, the choice should also be free from duress, and it should also be free from any form of coercion. But coercion is a very special term, and I want to spend some time talking to you about what it means. With respect to coercion, coercion is not always a bad thing, right? In the sense that factors are always coercive, right? There are multiple factors that are coercive in how they work. For example, if you want to buy a big fridge, right? You could be someone who is middle to lower income, and the degree to which you need a fridge could be a coercive factor to the degree to which you don't have money. These are both coercive factors that are trying to pull you in different directions. A really good advert could also just be very coercive as well into getting you to buy that particular thing. But something being coercive doesn't limit your ability to weigh up its coercion along with a bunch of other factors that influence your ability to make a decision. So, something being coercive doesn't mean that it is removing your ability to make a decision. You are able to move in a different direction even if a choice is being coercive. However, there are cases where coercion becomes problematic and it infringes on your ability to make a choice. This specifically refers to times where it threatens your life or your safety. So, examples include signing a contract with a gun pointed to your head. That is because you don't have a choice. If the choice is between death and doing whatever someone says, then that no longer becomes a choice. So, that is an example of something being far more coercive than it should be. The second, because it's threatening your life slash safety. Secondly, is threats of sexual violence, right? So if you are pressuring someone and if you are coercing them into doing a particular sexual act or whatever the case may be, in a situation where they have no other choice, right? And they eventually say yes, right? That's not a valid choice because the choice is between them doing whatever you are saying and their safety being threatened. So that's why that's not a valid form of choice. Then the third one would be hostage encounters. And I think I'm not going to spend much time analyzing this because it's very similar to the concept of having a gun to your head. So those are the things that make coercion negative or that make coercion harmful. Quick recap of the criteria for a valid choice. If it is rational, if it is informed, and if it is voluntarily made. Please make sure that you are understanding each of these. Then we're now going to have a discussion about deciding who should make a decision, right? And I think this is an important part of debating because there's always conversations around who should be making the decision. Generally, it's a toss up between the government and individuals. We do have another video on introduction to government where we also cover details about government. So please make sure you watch that video, preferably after this one. So, proving who should make a decision on a topic comes down to three things. Again, I like just listing things so I can make it simple for you guys to understand. Number one, it is who has the most information to make the decision, right? Secondly, it is who will experience the consequences of that decision the most. Thirdly, it is whose job is it to make that decision, um, generally speaking. All right. So now we're moving on to making choice arguments. All of the things that I've explained them, they're going to be put together in a way that kind of makes a lot of sense now. So there are four things that you kind of want to prove when making a choice argument. The first one is that the actor you are choosing is the best one to make the decision. Secondly, you want to choose that you want to analyze why the choice that they would make is a valid one. Remember, we have a criteria for that. Thirdly, you'd want to prove that even if the choice results in undesirable consequences, there are still derivable benefits from them making that choice. Okay, then it's three things, it's not four. I need to go fix that. But yeah, you under the first one, in terms of choosing that they are the best actor to make the decision, that's referring to the criteria we just discussed in the previous slide. The second one about whether or not they should about whether or not the choice they're making is a valid one is the criteria we were discussing for validity. And then the third one, which is something new, it's showing why even if their choice results in undesirable consequences, there are still derivable benefits that are going to come from it. Let's kind of break all of this down and talk about it. The example that I have here is an example relating to abortion and kind of how the argument for why pregnant people should have the right to make the choice to terminate a pregnancy is there. So the first one is I show why they're in the best position to make the decision. The first one I talk about is how they have the most information regarding their body. You can pause it and read it. I'm not going to read off the slide, that's very unnecessary. Secondly, about why they're going to experience the consequences the most. Thirdly, why, according to all forms of law, we have the right to govern over our own bodies. Then the second level of the argument is showing why the choice that they would make is a valid one. I very simply just stuck to the criteria that I provided as is. Yeah, and then the third one here is showing why even if they make a bad decision or they regret their decision, giving them the right or giving them the ability to make that decision for themselves is still something that is incredibly beneficial and we should allow for it to happen. So, after watching this video, I don't want to hear people standing up and going, so and so should have the right to do this. It is their right, therefore they should make the decision. I've just provided you with comprehensive information on how to make that choice argument. Please don't take it for granted. Thank you everyone for making it this far into the video. We hope that the information was valuable to you and we hope that our course continues to enrich your debating career. Everyone who works at After Freedom does so by volunteering their time, absolutely free of charge. We are also dedicated to providing you with this information with no charge. If you would like to donate to After Freedom so that we can keep these operations running and so that we can get more people involved, please do see the details in the description. It would be really, really helpful to us so that we can continue helping you and the broader community. But with that being said, thank you very much, and we cannot wait to see you next week again.